Spine-chilling revelation, terrifying cult follows me, unexplainable secrets of the cursed exposed. Emily had never felt fear like this before. The gentle rustle of Maplewood's leaves now felt like sinister whispers, creeping into her consciousness as she stepped outside for a breath of air. Evening shadows hid the familiar shapes of her neighborhood, turning the friendly faces of her neighbors into something unrecognizable. She'd just finished another exhausting night shift at the hospital, her aching bones craving rest. But instead, she was greeted by an unsettling sight, strange symbols etched into the grass, patterns that twisted her stomach into knots. They weren't typical designs, just markings that danced at the edges of her memory like something she couldn't place a nightmare. She shook her head, attributing her unease to the fatigue of juggling work and her spirited son, Max. But the feeling lingered, thick in the humid air, creeping in like a hungry predator closing in on its prey. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily's sense of comfort began to unravel. Flickering lights in the distance caught her eye, shadows swaying unnaturally as if beckoning her into their depths. That night, whispers flitted through her mind, insistent and taunting. Every gust of wind sent chills down her spine, as if unseen eyes were watching from beyond the veil of darkness. The perfect suburb she once adored began revealing its sinister underbelly, and with each passing day, paranoia sank deeper into her bones. Were the neighbors still friendly, or had they always been something else entirely? A series of unnerving occurrences began to unfold. Garden gnomes vanished, the gate to her backyard swung ominously on creaky hinges, and something gnawed at the back of her mind, a sense of being observed. It all started to coalesce around one insidious clue, a local cult, whispered about in alarming tones among the few brave enough to speak up. Their practices promised safety and belonging, but at a price the dark kind of gifts Emily couldn't even begin to fathom. Her heart raced as she tried to plead with the authorities. "It's just harmless gatherings," they'd say, brushing her off like she was just a paranoid single mother. Did no one else feel the weight of this pressing dread? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As dusk stole the last remnants of light, panic fully enveloped Emily's heart when she realized Max had vanished amidst the gathering shadows. An eerie congregation outside, faces obscured by masks she recognized too late. It was too late. Driving fury replaced her chilling fear as she fought through the crowd, adrenaline surging. With every frantic beat of her heart, she stepped closer to the core of the ritual, dread coiling tight in her throat. They were chanting, familiar faces lost in a grotesque masquerade, and in that moment, it struck her like a punch to the gut. These were her neighbors, her supposed allies, entangled in a darkness more potent than mere evil. Betrayal filled her lungs with terror as she surged into their midst, determined to expose the secrets lurking beneath the well-manicured lawns. What would she have to sacrifice to save Max? And was she prepared to face the shadows that had ensnared her home? Emily's heart raced as she lunged forward, shoving past masked figures cloaked in shadows. Their chants echoed in her ears, each syllable a serrated blade slicing through her resolve. She needed to find Max. The thought of him, lost among these wretched souls, felt like fire igniting her veins. "Max," she screamed, desperation tinging her voice. Eyes turned towards her, some peering from behind grotesque masks, the familiarity of their faces twisting in a way that made her stomach churn. She stumbled, the grass slick beneath her feet, feeling the oppressive weight of the gathering. It was real. This was happening, and she was in the very heart of it. The air thickened, heavy with incense and something darker, an undercurrent of dread that clawed at her throat. She spotted a figure near the center, draped in ornate robes, hands raised in an elaborate gesture as if summoning the very darkness that encircled them. Was it a leader? Was Max near? She pressed deeper, her chest tightening with dread and purpose. Suddenly, she heard a voice, sweet and haunting, a child's laughter piercing through the chaos. "Mommy!" The sound was unmistakable. It tugged at her heart, an unyielding beacon guiding her through. With frantic breaths, she pushed through the throngs of bodies, the energy swirling like a tempest around her. Then, there he was, Max, his small frame bound by what looked like delicate vines, twisted around his arms and legs. His eyes were wide, glistening with fear. "Mommy, help!" His voice cracked, and her heart shattered. Time seemed to freeze as Emily darted forward, clawing at the twisted fibers that held him captive. The crowd began to chant louder, a fierce crescendo that consumed her. She could feel their energy rising, a wave of dark intentions crashing over her. The masks turned, and she was suddenly surrounded by a circle of watching eyes, each filled with an insatiable hunger. "What are you doing? Let him go!" Emily shouted, desperation pouring from her as she fought against the bindings. It was a battle of wills. Her motherly instinct clashed with the cold void of the cult's collective gaze. Would they really harm a child? One of the figures stepped forward, a mask adorned with sinister carvings. It spoke, the voice drenched in honeyed malice. "He is meant to be one of us. He will be reborn into our embrace." The words dripped like venom, sending a chill through Emily. "No!" The primal scream erupted from her throat. How could they think they had the right? In that moment, realizing the futility of pleading, she mustered every ounce of her strength and lunged at Max's captor, her fingers trembling but fierce. Suddenly, arms seized her from behind, restraining her as she fought with wild intensity. The rhythmic chanting enveloped her, and she could barely sense Max's terrified gaze locked on her. She could feel the cold creep into her spine. Clarity struck like a lightning bolt. They were not just neighbors, they were predators wearing masks of trust. That as the chanting intensified, the ground trembled. Energy flared around them, and dark shadows whispered promises of chaos and despair. Emily's resolve hardened. She wouldn't lose him to this nightmare. Desperate, she strained against her captors, her skin crawled with the sinister energy swirling around them. What were they about to do? Would Max be lost forever, claimed by this cult? As if sensing her despair, the figure with the mask stepped closer to Max, a knife glinting in the flickering light. In that fraction of a second, a singular terrifying thought pierced her mind. Was she too late? Emily's screams mingled with the howls of the wind as the darkness intensified, pulling her closer to its chilling embrace. What would be the price to break free and save her son? As she struggled, she felt the walls of her reality begin to crack, shadows plunging into the depths of her soul. Would she embrace the darkness to snatch Max back from the edge of eternal night, or would they both succumb to a fate worse than death? The gathering closed in tighter, an insatiable hunger reflected in every masked face. She knew the choice was coming, and in that moment of chilling clarity, where light faded into unwavering dark, the ritual had only just begun. Emily's body jolted as a deafening crash echoed beneath her feet. The ground shuddered, sending shockwaves through her limbs. The air pulsated with a raw energy, sharp and invasive, whispering promises both ancient and malevolent. She twisted, trying to break free from the grip of her captors. Fear clawed at her throat, a thick mass of panic. The chanting had morphed into something primal, a dark chorus that resonated deep in her bones. The masked faces loomed closer, as if angry at her defiance, their eyes flickering with a black hunger. Sweat trickled down the back of her neck, mingling with the strangeness of incense smoke that choked the air. It felt suffocating, like the weight of shadows pressing against her chest. Max's terrified wails punctured the horror, slicing through the thick tension like a knife. Each pathetic cry sent a new wave of fear coursing through her. "Mommy! Don't leave me!" The sound of her son's voice echoed, a siren call that shattered her resolve. "Hold on, baby. I'm coming." Emily screamed, but her words seemed to dissolve in the chaos, lost amidst the maddening chants. She kicked and twisted, adrenaline powering her limbs. The figures surrounding her projected a surreal calm as they continued their ritual. Where was the humanity in these wretches? Their faces blurring into grotesque masks that hinted at normalcy but dripped with insanity set her heart racing. Then, she felt at the cool edge of the knife against Max's small skin. The leader had reached him. Her throat constricted in horror as she shouted, "Stop! I swear, I'll kill you." She strained against the weight of the bodies holding her down, but each movement only deepened the grip of their cold fingers. A low chuckle rippled from the figure with the carved mask, no longer just a mask, but a visage of distortion that mirrored the madness of the crowd. "You cannot fight what you do not understand, mother. The darkness hungers, and he has been chosen." Chosen? Did they really think they could claim him? The thought burned fiercely in Emily's mind, igniting an inferno of her own determination. She felt a surge, a flicker within her as ancient instincts rose to meet the challenge. This was not a mere gathering, it was a feast, and she would not allow them to have her be. Oh, why did I? In a sudden surge of desperation, she gazed into Max's wide, frightened eyes, losing herself in their depths. With a voice that transcended the chaos, she whispered, "Fight, Max. You're stronger than them." The words hung heavy between them, tethering them together even amidst this nightmare. In a swift moment, her heart stopped as Max shifted, a flicker of rebellion igniting in his gaze. His bindings began to loosen, vines falling away like dead leaves. It was as if her call had given him power, her defiance sparking a light in his aching heart. The crowd faltered, their chanting breaking momentarily as shock gripped their faces. In that precious instant, Emily seized her chance. She tore free from her captors, muscles burning as she sprinted towards Max, lunging forward, but the leader intercepted her with ferocious speed. A flick of his wrist sent Emily tumbling to the ground, pain shooting through her hip. "Foolish," he hissed, stepping closer to Max. The blade glinted dangerously. "No." She was up again, wild and raw, her eyes burning with protective fury. She would not let him, she couldn't let him do it. The darkness was stretching, testing her resolve, threatening to swallow them both whole. Suddenly, a monolithic sound echoed through the air, a crack of thunder that was both deafening and surreal. As the sky opened up, the air turned electric, crackling with energy. Everyone paused. For a moment, the rhythmic chant faltered to gasps. Rain began to pour, washing away the oppressive darkness, drenching the gathering until it felt alive. But the storm was too late. The leader smirked, raising the blade to Max's throat as thunder roared through the chaos. A sickening silence fell over the crowd, breath held in anticipation of impending doom. What would Emily do? Could she still save him? Or would this storm become their undoing, the harbinger of true darkness? As clouds swirled above, a terrifying realization washed over her. She needed to make a choice, and she was running out of time. The rain fell in heavy sheets, the sound roaring like 1,000 angry spirits. Everything around Emily turned into a blur of gray and black, the wild storm reflecting the tempest inside her heart. She surged forward, defiance coursing through her veins. The leader, with his twisted grin and glinting blade, seemed poised to savor her suffering. "Let him go!" she shouted, her voice hoarse, splintered with fear and fury. Each word cut through the downpour, hanging in the air like a challenge to the cosmos itself. The chant began again, a low, guttural sound that mingled with the pattering rain. The figures around her resumed their ritual, their focus intensifying, as if the storm only heightened their zeal. Emily, caught between the urgency of the moment and the horrors lurking in the shadows, felt the pull of dread gnaw at her sanity. Max's small face, illuminated by the flickering firelight, was pale and terrified. His eyes widened as the leader leaned closer, the blade resting against tender skin. Desperation clawed at Emily. Instinct replaced reason, she couldn't think, only move. With a primal scream, she thrust herself forward, legs screaming in protest, and surged toward the leader. The world narrowed to the space around Max, her child, her heart. The masked figures shifted, blocking her path, yet she plowed through them like a freight train. In the onslaught of bodies, a fist struck her side, but she barely felt it. A haze of adrenaline blurred her vision. She was a mother on a mission, nothing would stop her from reaching him. Max! She cried, voice breaking, as she slashed through the crowd. In that desperate heartbeat, the world shifted. A wall of force slammed into her, a surge of darkness, tangible and cold, pouring from the leader. It crashed against her body like a rogue wave, knocking her off balance. She gasped, a wave of fear clenching her throat as the chanting crescendoed around her. Your strength is futile, the leader taunted, voice smooth, dripping with malice. The ancient rites demand sacrifice. Emily's heart dropped. Sacrifice? Her mind raced. She locked eyes with Max, searching for the spark she ignited moments before. He still had that flicker of rebellion, and if she only held on to it long enough, the sky cracked, lightning lacerating the clouds, illuminating the crowd of masked faces, twisted in fervor. Dread seeped through the air, clinging to her skin like the rain. She stumbled, struggling against the oppressive energy locking her in place, but then something extraordinary happened. Max's voice, small yet strong, rose above the storm. Mommy, I'm not afraid. A force exploded through Emily, pushing her back on her feet. She could feel a shift, raw and powerful, as if the storm itself had answered Max's cry. The gathered figures faltered, their chants dwindling to whispers, confusion gripping their masked faces. But the leader shrieked, fury lighting his features. Silence him. The darkness must have its due. Suddenly, the ground lurched beneath them, the earth fracturing as the storm unleashed its full fury. Rain pelted down in a frenzy, darkness and light collided in a monstrous conflict. Emily surged forward. She could feel something stirring deep within her, an age-old strength erupting in her chest. Yet, before she could reach Max, a shadow lunged from the edge of the gathering, the leader's true intent becoming ever more terrifying. He was not just there to reclaim a child, he meant to harness the storm's power for something far darker. Emily saw the glint of the blade as he thrust it toward Max, the boy's wide eyes reflecting terror and defiance. No! Emily screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the roar of thunder. Time slowed, fear gripped her heart. In that moment, she realized she was not merely fighting for her son, but against a much greater evil. Something ancient, lurking beyond the veil of understanding. What would happen if she couldn't reach him in time? Would the darkness claim the last glimmer of hope left in the world? With resolve tightening within her, she prepared for a fight she knew would either save her son or damn them both. But as the leader raised the blade, a chilling thought struck her. What if the storm was her salvation, but the birth of something truly monstrous? As the knife descended, Emily braced herself for the unimaginable. Would this be the moment everything changed? In the eye of terror, she stood ready, but was it too late for them both? The blade glinted like a serpent's fang as it sliced through the torrential rain. Emily's breath caught in her throat, a desperate cry trapped between hope and dread. The world narrowed, the storm, the chanting figures, even the ground beneath her feet faded into the background. All that existed was the agonizing descent of the blade. Suddenly, a bright flash of lightning illuminated the scene. It lit up the leader's twisted smile, gleeful, unhinged. In that jagged moment, she saw him for what he truly was, a conduit for something unfathomable and dark. The storm roared in response, violent winds spiraling like the anger of 1,000 souls. Within her, something swelled. Her heart raced. She felt Max's fear, his courage, flooding through her like molten lava, igniting every part of her being. She was no longer just a mother. She was a storm in her own right. No. Emily's voice broke through the chaos as she lunged forward, pushing through the throngs of worshippers who melted away in shock. Their masked faces turned in unison, lost in panic and confusion. They had underestimated the strength that love could wield in the face of pure malice. No more than a breath away from Max, she felt the air shift. The leader smirked, confident in his power as he tilted the dagger. But the storm had changed, it was aligning with her fury, echoing her determination. Stop it. The words erupted from her lips, fierce and commanding. And just for an instant, the chanting hushed, uncertainty flickering across the crowd. The leader's sneer faltered. You believe you can stop this? You're nothing. But Emily felt a surge of energy pulse through the ground, a ripple of wrath ignited by her unwavering hope. She'd been pushed to the edge, but the edge was where strength was born. The world shook again. Lightning struck close, illuminating the grotesque figures around her. They wavered now, no longer an impenetrable wall, but a chorus of doubts against the electrifying promise of her love. She charged at the leader, the storm pouring energy through her very soul. As her fingers reached out for Max, she felt the cold steel through the air. From behind the leader emerged another shadow, a figure cloaked in darkness, joining the cult's fray. Emily's heart dropped as she recognized the wide-eyed visage. It was her husband, his face twisted in torment. "Help me, Emily!" he cried, the voice not hers but caught in a netherworld of agony. She froze, a dark despair flooding her senses. Had this cult claimed him too? Was he part of this ritual? "Josh!" she screamed, feeling the knife's edge cut deeper into her resolve than she thought possible. Her husband's eyes were void of the love she remembered, replaced by a hollow reflection that echoed with danger. "They told me this was the only way," he gasped, twisting against invisible bindings, desperation clawing at his throat. "What do you mean? You need to fight this," Emily urged, but the storm had grown chaotic, like an unsettled beast awakened from its slumber. Dark tendrils of energy spiraled from the leader's outstretched hands, wrapping around Josh, drawing him into an abyss. Emily's pulse quickened, her world narrowed again, focus zeroing in. She had to make a choice. "Choose." The voice of the leader slithered through the air, thick like the rain. "Your son or your husband? One must be sacrificed." It echoed in Emily's mind, twisting her love into despair. The weight of the impossible choice crushed her. Could she risk losing anything else? With a primal scream, she surged forward, channeling everything she had left, the fury for her son, the love for her husband, the desperate fight against dark forces. Everything converged within her as she reached out, not knowing what would happen next. But in that pivotal second, the storm seemed to roar louder, as if it too were making its choice. Then, a blinding flash exploded around her, sending everyone sprawling to the ground. Emily shielded her eyes, breathless, heartbeat thundering in her ears. When the light receded, she blinked into the chaos, searching desperately for Max. For Josh. Were they safe? Had she altered fate, or had she unleashed something worse? Somewhere in the tumult, a low whisper crept through the air, chilling her spine. The storm has only just begun. What forces had she awakened, and would she be able to face whatever horror lay ahead? The blinding light faded, giving way to a thick blanket of darkness. Emily struggled to make sense of her surroundings. Heart pounding, she staggered, her vision returning only to be met by chaos. Heavy rain lashed down like a barrage of knives, mingling with panic and confusion. "Max! Josh!" she screamed, her voice hoarse and raw, swallowed by the storm. An eerie silence swallowed the thrumming rain, settling heavily on her chest. She stumbled forward, searching the ground for any sign of them. Frantic, she clutched her hands, grounding herself. The chanting had stopped, but their presence lingered like a ghostly whisper. Glancing around, the faces of the cultists had shifted from exuberance to concern. They exchanged terrified glances, masks slipping from their fervent unity into chaos. She noticed one figure lingering in the shadows, still focused on the leader as if he had become the center of the storm. The leader pulled back, as though blindsided. In that moment, Emily felt emboldened. If she was going to free her family, she had to understand the source of their power. She approached the leader. "What have you done to my husband?" "To Josh." The leader's smile returned, but it was tainted with something darker. "You don't understand, do you? Love can become a weapon or a curse." Before she could retort, thunder cracked violently above, sending the entranced cultists scattering. Emily could see shadows moving through the haze, figures blending with the storm. Fear clawed at her gut as the realization sunk in. This was no ordinary ritual. Something primal and ancient stirred beneath the surface. From the depths of the storm, an unearthly howl echoed, profound and unsettling. Emily's heart raced anew. She turned toward where Max had been, desperate to find him amidst the chaos. As she looked, a flicker of light danced through the darkness, revealing a figure in the throng of fleeing bodies. Josh. Emily. He called, voice strained, but unwavering. Her heart leapt, but before she could move, the chilling voice of the leader interrupted. You don't know what you're risking. If you reach him now, it's all over. Emily hesitated, a single moment stretching into eternity. She could feel Max, his essence calling to her. But the choice loomed like a shadow, heavier than before. Would reaching Josh condemn them both? The storms overhead churned violently, swirling ominously, as if caught in an eternal fight between light and darkness. You're a part of this now. The leader cried, extending a hand toward her, dark tendrils snaking outward. A guttural roar split the air, drowning her in terror. From behind the leader, twisted forms emerged, grotesque shapes morphing in agony. Cultists fell to their knees, shrieking, their fear palpable, feeding something horrific rising in the shadows. Emily clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. If she did not face this darkness head-on, it would consume everything she loved. She surged forward, thrusting through the throng of writhing bodies, her senses igniting as the storm wrapped around her. The energy crackled like electricity, sparking fury and strength within her. Josh, hold on. She cried, but the words felt feeble against the monstrous cacophony. He was fighting against the chains, terror twisting his face, eyes pleading. Emily, please. Don't do this. Silence fell again for the briefest moment, the air thick with unspeakable tension. Emily's breath hitched. The ground trembled, and a screech echoed through the air as a ghastly creature broke through the storm's veil, its form an unfathomable fusion of shadow and nightmare. It howled, awakening the primal fear deep within Emily as its gaze locked onto her. This was no mere cult, the storm was alive, and it hungered. With resolve throbbing through her veins, she stepped forward, heart racing, knowing she was up against something unimaginable. I will not let you take them. But as the creature drew closer, its glare piercing through her soul, she sensed the true horror of this moment. Whatever this storm had revealed, it was only the beginning of something far worse. Would she find the strength to battle not just for her family, but for her very own soul? The thunder rumbled ominously, as if anticipating the answer. A whisper curled around her thoughts, you have opened the gateway. Emily braced herself, knowing now that the true battle was just beginning. What would emerge from it, she could only dread. Emily faced the creature, her heart pounding a frenetic rhythm against her ribs. The air charged, crackling with an energy that made the hairs on her neck stand on end. She could feel the pressure of the storm, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath, waiting for a terrible climax. Emily! Josh shouted again, his voice almost drowned by the wailing winds. Panic took root in her chest. She had to reach him. But instinct whispered a warning, clawing at her mind. Stay back, it's not safe. The monstrous entity loomed closer, the shadows swirling around it like a living cloak. It was a mass of eyes, teeth, and an insatiable hunger, dark as a bottomless pit. The leader's laughter rang out, chilling and triumphant, as if he reveled in her despair. It's too late, Emily. You've disturbed forces you can't comprehend. You are not their savior but their sacrifice. She gritted her teeth, refusing to let fear paralyze her. The chains binding Josh twisted and rattled, and she fought against the dread that clawed at her heart. As she stepped around fallen cultists who now writhed on the ground, their faces twisted in sheer terror, she felt the storm rip through her, electrifying her resolve. No. I won't abandon you. Emily shouted, pushing through the chaos. She could see their eyes wide with horror. Whatever the cultists had awakened stirred not just in the storm but deep within themselves. They were losing their grip on reality, consumed by their own fear. As she got closer, Josh strained against his chains, the metal cutting into his wrists, blood mingling with the rain. "You have to run. Get out of here." His eyes were wild, filled with a cocktail of desperation and rage. The creature lunged, snapping its horrific jaws inches from Emily, its breath foul and hot. She gasped, recoiling, but instinct propelled her forward. "Shut up!" she yelled back at the leader, the edge of her fury rising. She wouldn't be prey. Not today, but as she pressed forward, the ground beneath her shook violently, echoing the cries of the cultists now collapsing, caught in a trance of terror. It was a dizzying spectacle, the storm, the creature, the shadows swirling around her, threatening to pull her in, and then she saw it, flickering at the fringes of her mind, the ancient symbol carved in the ground, glowing faintly, pulsating with energy. It was the focal point of the storm's power, and it called to her. Somehow, she understood, if she could reclaim that symbol, twist it back to its intended purpose, she could banish the nightmare. "Emily!" Josh's voice broke through again, more urgent than before. "Please." Gathering her courage, Emily reached for the symbol, fingers brushing along the jagged edges. The moment she touched it, a surge of energy coursed through her, fierce and warm, pushing the impending darkness momentarily back. The creature shrieked, recoiling as if it had been scalded, but the leader's eyes burned brighter. "You fool!" he hissed, his voice cracking with a mix of rage and surprise. "You cannot control it." The storm raged around them, rain pelting down harder, but Emily felt a connection. Strength flowed through her as she grasped the symbol tighter, willing it to respond. "I will control it," she shouted defiantly. Desperation filled her as the creature lunged again, and darkness thickened, threatening to engulf her whole. The ground heaved and the air crackled with the tension of powers colliding. Then she heard whispers, muted yet persistent, threading through the chaos. "Turn it, set them free." A chorus of voices enveloped her, unfamiliar yet oddly comforting. With a primal scream of both fear and courage, she willed the lightning within to purge the shadows. The storm's howl morphed into a tortured wail, colliding with her resolve. The symbol beneath her pulsed, and the world spiraled into a vortex of chaos. As the ground shuddered, a blinding flash erupted. And just like that, everything went dark again. Emily gasped, senses screaming as she found herself suspended in a void. No ground, no rain, no creature. Just silence enveloping her like a shroud. Where had it all gone? What had she done? In that suffocating stillness, a voice echoed through the darkness. "You think you've escaped, but you've only begun to awaken the true horrors." A chill coiled around her heart, tightening its grip, as the weight of her choices sank in. She knew then that whatever had come for her family was not finished yet. The storm had simply taken a breath, preparing for the next nightmare to unfold. What awaited her in that suffocating silence? Would she still be the same when the light returned? Darkness enveloped Emily, its suffocating silence pressing against her chest. She felt like a ghost in a forgotten realm, lost in the depth of some forsaken dream. Her heart raced, pumping adrenaline as if it could shatter the hushed void surrounding her. What had she awakened? Then, like a distant thunder, echoes of whispers pierced the silence. They drifted in and out, flitting through her mind like shadows. "You opened the door. You cannot close it." She shuddered. A sense of dread clawed at her. Disoriented, she reached out, her fingers brushing against an unseen wall, cold and unyielding. Panic surged. She couldn't remain here. Not like this. She had to move, to escape this emptiness that felt alive. With a sudden, desperate burst of will, she thought of Josh. His face, twisted in fear yet holding a flicker of hope. "Josh!" she called, her voice swallowed by nothingness. The echo bounced back, mocking her. Just then, distortions began to swirl at the edges of the inky blackness, shapes forming and dissolving, a grotesque kaleidoscope of faces she recognized, and some she didn't. Cultists, twisted in wicked glee, their eyes like voids, seemed to reach for her, ensnared by their own madness. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing this nightmare to fade, but the horror only deepened. Then she felt something brush against her ankle, a creature lurking just beyond her sight. She gasped and stepped back, but there was nowhere to go. The silence deepened, thick with an ominous weight. Goosebumps erupted on her skin. "Leave me alone!" she screamed, rage swelling inside her as she clenched her fists. "I didn't ask for this." As if in response, the shadows shifted. They coiled and twisted, forming grotesque figures that seemed to dance with malicious delight. They were taunting her. Then, unexpectedly, a soft light ignited ahead, a pinpoint, flickering weakly in the dark. Emily took tentative steps toward it. The whispers grew louder, rising in dissonance, yet the light beckoned with a different kind of promise. The closer she got, the more the whispers became frantic. "Your fate is sealed," they shrieked. "You belong to the void." Sweat slicked her palms as she extended her hand toward the light. It was warm, a stark contrast to the cold that gripped the dark around her. She grasped it, and suddenly it flared to life, illuminating the void. Her breath hitched. In its glow, she could see grotesque murals, depicting sacred rituals and ancient beings unfurling across the walls of this liminal space. Her heart dropped. The cultists had been preparing a ceremony, a summoning, but what had they truly unleashed? The light pulsed, and with it came fleeting images of Josh, bound and screaming at the mercy of that creature. His face twisted in torment, begging for release. "No!" Emily cried, the weight of their bond igniting her will. "I will not let them take you." She turned back, and the darkness surged against her, attempting to pull her down. But fear was afire within her. She lashed out at the shadows, an instinctive thrust of her will honed by desperation, igniting the surrounding murals. As the flickering light consumed the shadows, they shrieked, intertwining in chaotic fury, bending in on themselves. A fierce wind whipped around her, splitting the void in half. The rays of the light stretched toward her, forming a path, a bridge back to the storm, and to Josh. With every ounce of strength, she ran. Suddenly, the ground shook with a mighty roar, the very fabric of the void tearing around her. She could see a doorway forming, radiating light like a beacon of salvation. But through the roar, a dreadful voice boomed, "You cannot escape what you have unleashed." "I can!" Emily screamed, determination flaring, seizing the moment. She burst through the light, her heart racing, her soul alive with fierce defiance. And then, with a thunderous crack, she was thrown into the storm again, back into chaos, senses overwhelmed. Josh's cries reached her, mingling with the wind. "Emily, hurry! It's coming!" What had she unleashed? The bond of darkness tightened around her, pulling her into the depths of despair. The creature's hunger roared back to life, and she could feel the cold darkness closing in again. The true horror awaited revenge from forces she didn't understand. What was the price for seeking to control powers far beyond her? As echoes of the past surged to life, Emily faced a decision that could seal their fate forever. But the question loomed, could she find the strength to fight, not just for survival, but to face the truth? The shadows whispered promises of broken minds and crushed souls, but she would not fall easily. Not now. Not ever. What awaited them in the tempest ahead? Would the storm reveal its final intent? The storm around Emily roared like a beast awakened from slumber. Wind lashed at her, flinging rain that stung her skin, yet she pressed on, driven by the desperate hope that Josh was still waiting. But the echoes of the void clung to her, whispering dark taunts that twisted inward, planting seeds of doubt. "Turn back," one voice beckoned, smooth as silk yet laced with malice. "You don't want to see what's waiting for you, no," she replied fiercely, shaking her head. "I want to listen." Dashing through the torrential rain, frantic thoughts swirled with the chaos. What if she had really unleashed something terrible? What if the cultists had wrangled not just a creature, but a curse? Each step felt heavier than the last, dragging her into a tangible dread that curled beneath her skin, that a thunderclap echoed, shaking the ground as if threatening to split it open. Emily stumbled, her heart thudding wildly. Josh! She screamed again, the name swallowed by the raging storm. The darkness flickered at the edges of her vision. Figures loomed, watching, waiting for her inevitable collapse. Just ahead, an outline emerged. Was it a tree or a shadow? She staggered toward it, hoping for shelter, but the shape morphed, revealing a figure silhouetted by the flashes of lightning. Emily. The voice was faint, frantic. Run! She recognized Josh's voice. Panic surged anew, propelling her forward, but that ever-present shadow surged behind her, a tidal wave of chilling malevolence. It clung to her, more constricting with every passing moment. I'm coming! She gasped, desperately fighting against the pull of despair that threatened to suffocate her. As she neared, his figure sharpened, and she finally could see him bound to a gnarled tree, eyes wide with terror. You need to get away from here. No. She couldn't let him face that horror alone. She extended her arms, her fingers brushing against the ropes that held him. But in that moment, a new sound tore through the storm, a low growl that reverberated like a death knell. The creature was upon them, a mass of shadow moving with unsettling speed, growing in size as it drew nearer. The air thickened, a tangible weight pressing down on her. Emily's breath quickened, fear coiled tight in her chest. Josh! She strained, tugging at the ropes that bound him, but they wouldn't budge. Emily, listen. His eyes were wild, darting about as if he could see the horror creeping closer. They're coming. It won't stop. A sickening realization unfurled in her stomach. The shadows weren't just conjured from the depths, no. This was something real, something alive, a manifestation of their nightmares fed by the darkness that the cult had summoned. You have to get out. You're the only one who can break the seal. He shouted, his voice thin yet urgent. Break the seal. Her mind raced. What did he mean? There was so much she still didn't understand. The growl deepened, resonating through the very ground beneath her feet. Fight. You have to fight. Only you can end this. Just then, a bolt of lightning illuminated the creature, revealing grotesque, writhing tendrils sprouting from a twisted core, rising and stretching toward her, hungry and insatiable. It was vast, a swirling mass of darkness, sliding over each other with sinister intent. Believe in yourself. Josh shouted, struggling against the bindings. As the shadow lunged, snapping like a beast set on prey, something inside Emily ignited. Lifting her chin defiantly, she mustered her will, reaching deep within for the light she had touched earlier. It flickered in her memory, ripe with potential. Leave him alone. She screamed, fists clenched. I am not afraid. With that, a surge of power erupted from her, a blinding light erupting from her core. The shadows shrieked, recoiling, revealing the raw terror of their form. Heart pounding, she pushed against the darkness, focusing on that glimmer until it surged outwards, illuminating the storm. But even as the shadows shrieked, another voice joined the cacophony, deep and resonating, you belong to me. As the ground shook and the storm intensified, Emily felt the truth slip like sand through her fingers. What have I awakened? And in that moment of dread clarity, the shadows twisted, morphing back into shape she recognized, friends lost, faces tormented, appearing one by one. That would she really grasp the power to break the seal, or had she just awakened a deeper pain? The tempest surged higher, demanding an answer, prompting a final, chilling question. Was the price of truth greater than the fear that sought to consume her? The storm still raged around Emily, but within her, a quiet strength began to emerge. Every face twisted in pain that manifested from the shadows, each friend, each neighbor, pulled her deeper into despair. The darkness loomed, eager to claim her. But she had fought too hard, too long to let any of it break her now. No. She howled, forcing herself closer to Josh and the gnarled tree, grounding her anger in focus. I won't let this finish us. The strings binding her husband were fraying under the bright heat of her determination. As she gripped them fiercely, memories flooded in each cherished moment with Josh, their son Max's innocent laughter, the warmth of comfort, family, love. Each spark ignited something fierce inside her that was far stronger than that darkness. "Emily!" Josh shouted, his voice rising above the tumult. "It's real. You have the strength, but you must believe in who you are." With every ounce of will, Emily concentrated on the primal energy roiling within her, a storm building beyond the raging tempest. She felt it, the power of love, hurt, and hope, pulsing against the backdrop of chaos. Drawing upon it all, she shouted, "I am fighting for you." She tore the last of the vines from Josh's arms, a fierce light surging from her heart. It cascaded outward in a blinding flash, illuminating the face of every tortured soul around them. The shadows hissed, writhing in pain as they were drawn toward her light, desperate to escape its purity. Emily felt warmth swelling around her, and undeniable force overpowered the lingering darkness. "Come on, Josh," she urged, grabbing his hand and pulling him upright. "We need to escape this nightmare." They faced the monstrous figure that was cleaving through the shadows, the frayed connection ready to snap. "You cannot leave without sacrificing." The leader screamed, his twisted visage scarier still. "You opened the door, and now—" "No!" Emily shouted back. "You're wrong. I opened the door to fight for those I love, and I want to let you take us." The wind howled, whipping around them furiously, but Emily and Josh stood firm, holding hands. With sheer adrenaline coursing through her, Emily took a step forward, focusing her will on the grotesque creature. "You're not real. You're just a reflection of the fears we let in." A shocked silence fell, the storm still swirling as she cast her words like a spell. The shadows flickered, hesitating against the incantation of conviction. "Face the truth." Josh chimed in, his eyes alight with fierce belief. "We can break this curse together." With that, the frayed connection between them snapped, a shockwave of energy rippling forward like a tidal wave. The shadows recoiled, their screams melding into the howl of the storm, furious with betrayal. In that moment of clarity, Emily lifted her arms skyward, invoking every ounce of strength, every bit of love she held for Max, for Josh, for herself. Light erupted like a rebirth from her core, swallowing the night. The creature howled, twisting in agony, collapsing as Emily poured everything into breaking the seal. Blinding energy surged from all sides, exploding with a brilliance that shattered the darkness. When the light finally receded, it left Emily breathless, standing alone in the clearing, but echoing calls of Max and Josh remained tethered to her heart. The storm around her quieted, the raging winds replaced by a serene stillness. She turned, searching frantically, but they weren't gone. Before her emerged Josh, his arms lifted, eyes bright with joy, followed closely by Max, his small hand clasped tightly in Josh's palm. "Mommy!" Max called, running into her arms, laughter breaking through her restraints of despair. "Oh, sweet boy," Emily gasped, her heart soaring, embracing him tightly. Tears of relief streamed down her face, washing away the last remnants of haunting shadows. Josh joined them, and they formed a solid unit, a holy triumvirate ready to face whatever lay in their paths ahead. "It's over," Josh murmured, relief coursing through him as he looked at Emily, his face coming alive again. "We're together. Again." But as they exchanged hopeful smiles, a whisper crept through the faint winds, echoing warnings of deepening shadows. "You may have survived, but darkness never truly fades." A tremor raced through Emily. The struggle might have subsided, but the echoes of fear had molded into wisdom. "We can always fight back," she said firmly, grasping their hands, knowing the shadows would attempt to encroach again. Together. And in that moment, hope ignited anew. They had faced terror and emerged whole, resilient. They would remain vigilant, guarding against encroaching darkness, for love and unyielding force would always bring them back to one another. Through storms or shadows, no matter the fear, they would carve their future together. It was just the beginning of their story, and they would write it together, one brave choice after another. "Now it's your turn." Don't let this moment pass you by. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. I want to hear from you. And this is crucial, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.